Welcome to another episode of our mini podcast, I Built a Company That Makes a Difference by B1. Here we talk to founders of sustainable businesses to get their takes on how and why they started their companies and the lessons that they've learned along the way. Today we've got Cayla O'Connell Davis, co-founder of Subset, primary pieces for everyday living produced using environmentally responsible processes, low-impact fabrics, and ethical manufacturing. Cayla, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Welcome. I have tons of questions for you. And I was on the site just before this. I absolutely love the minimalist style and look of all of your clothes. I really, really like it. So very interested in talking to you about how you built your business and your future plans. So
thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here. Subset is sort of the brainchild and passion project from a place of personal frustration with the fashion industry. My background was largely in apparel. I've pretty much worked every job you can in the fashion industry, from like runway styling backstage to doing strategy and direct to retail, design and production and merchandising. I was a shop girl forever. I mean, I've seen every facet of the industry, and I very much had a little bit of a personal crisis with it and needed to reconcile my own participation in it when I sort of pulled back the Iron Curtain, if you will, in early days, and realized how much detriment we were doing to the environment and the people. And this was even pre-Rana Plaza. But I was doing my master's at Parsons in fashion studies, and I focused my research on sustainable supply chain practices, lending from the cradle to cradle ideology and the circularity system in design. And this was a little bit pre-circular economy concepts were coming into the mainstream. So I had a hard time finding a job coming out of that. I actually worked for a environmental nonprofit briefly, aggregating the environmental data of the world's largest businesses, CDP. I was doing a lot of freelance work in styling, and then I actually did find a company that was sustainably minded and was hired to launch their apparel division. At the same time, we were going through an acquisition and kind of pivoted the strategy, focused it on home goods exclusively, and then didn't pursue apparel. And so what I discovered for the first time making home goods was that the supply chains are pretty identical. And so I learned a lot about organic cotton specifically. I learned a lot about eucalyptus. I learned a lot about hard goods, and was able to bring programs to multinational doors such as Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Macy's, Bed Bath & Beyond. Huge learning experience. It was very much like entrepreneurship 101, but without any of the personal risk and liability. And
that sounds really great then.
Yeah, it was amazing. And really just cut my teeth in bringing eco-friendly products to a mainstream market. And so after a few years of that, I really wanted to get back to my original goal and passion. And I had learned a lot about marketing eco-friendly items to the masses, and D2C was sort of on the rise. And I had decided to take the leap into entrepreneurship, called up a good friend of mine from graduate school that I met, who had, we had very similar work ethics and perspectives on the industry. She had a background in operations and tech. Also was working for a startup at the time. And so, our powers combined and kind of our expertise were very complementary. And so, we had this light bulb moment. Okay. At the time, sustainability in fashion was very nascent. It was an incredibly limited discourse. It was very conceptual, and it was very niche. It was all
about.
What
years are we talking about again?
Yeah, so this was probably 2013 when I started that research. 2012 to 2014 is when I was doing that research primarily for my master's. Right. And then we started the company in 2017. And throughout that time, the the sustainability conversation with respect to fashion was very much focused on anti-consumption, like mend, repair, reduce, recycle, all of these things that are great and definitely, slow fashion, and there's a place for. But to me, kind of coming from the side of like mass market, I knew that that wasn't going to penetrate the market. It wasn't going to move the needle. And I wanted to create a solution that really would. And I also had learned that trying to change large corporations was very difficult. They kind of had their tried and true models, they had their margins. And when you build a business on these overseas vendors that give you really great margins, and it's really hard to change them to buying something that's more expensive, investing in fair labor practices that are also more expensive, but are the wages that people deserve. And so I figured we got to start this business sustainably from the start. And so with Subset, we're focused on high frequency basics that impact people every single day. If everybody wears underwear. Not everybody is going to wear an artisan handcrafted shirt that is in this beautiful print that was made by this woman in Kenya, which is an amazing story. And I want you to buy that shirt as well. But everybody typically wears underwear, and you got to kind of rinse and repeat, replace it. You start your day with it. And so we figured if we can get consumers to start their day sustainably from the start, they're setting themselves up for success in making better decisions throughout the rest of their day that will permeate their larger lifestyle choices, and start to move the needle and impact the larger industry narrative. So, yeah.
Okay, I've got a ton of questions, and they're like all over the shop already. But I love what you just said. One of our earlier guests was they had it's similar, but for homeware, so bed sheets and linens, towels, etc. And we had a whole conversation. It was fantastic about how people kind of they forget about that or they overlook that. And I wanted to ask you about, underwear, innerwear, as you call it, and how, yeah, when you think of fast fashion, when you think of how to kind of combat consumption, overconsumption of clothes, accessories, just things, you don't think of underwear and you don't think of innerwear. You don't think of undershirts. You don't think of bras. And I wanted to talk to you about what you found in terms of your customer discovery and talking to customers. Is it an easy shift to make? Is it like, oh my gosh, this is a light bulb moment? Or what kind of education do you have to do on the market? Or is it self-explanatory and you're like, look, this is just, it's a swap. It's a 1-for-1. This is just better for you and the world.
That's a great question. I will say that because of my experience previously, which was also in kind of the sheets sector, doing comforters, sheets, etc., and bringing it to a mass market, which is typically not the fringe consumer who is leading the charge on new innovation in product discovery. So what we learned there through tons of focus groups, through market saturation, through mass retailer feedback, people will tell you all day that they want to choose an eco-friendly product. They want to buy something that's better for the environment and better for the people that produce it. But at the end of the day, what motivates their choice and their purchase is cost and convenience. And so our thesis was, we can make a very sustainable product all day. We need to make it inexpensive, and or accessible, I should say, and we need to make it convenient, from both a cost perspective, but also from, is it easy for me to get? And so that's really where we took the direct to consumer, path in terms of distribution, which was novel, quote unquote, at the time. There weren't a lot. I mean, they were bubbling up at that point, but definitely different from what my background was which was mostly focused on retail programs. And then the cost, we were taking on a lot of the cost for the customer upfront, and making sure that we were investing in a fully certified product from the farm level. We are a certified organic company, actually. And so from the farm level, clean cotton that is certified organic to the Global Organic Textile Standard, audited by third parties, free from harmful toxins like pesticides and fertilizers, but then in the processing, there's no additives that are chemical, that are highly toxic, no carcinogens, no heavy metals, no PFAS, no VOCs, and no bleach or chlorine. And then all the way through to distribution. So our packaging is plastic free. We actually rely very heavily on renewable energy. We are 60% solar powered in our supply chain downstream, pre-consumer, and then everything we can't control, like the distribution that UPS or USPS does, the gasoline in their trucks, we offset that with verified programs, which we have some feels around carbon offsetting, but that's kind of what we have to have a tapestry of approaches here. And so, sorry, getting back to your original question. Okay. So all of that said, educating consumers in discovery, all of that said, there's a lot of work that goes into creating this product. And it is very hard to communicate and package that. And we have found that, at least at the beginning, when we started the company and launched it, we found that working off of emotion to our consumer and the value add to them first was the key to giving them the light bulb moment. And most people really do have that light bulb moment. Okay, we lead with, yes, this is very good for the environment, but it's actually much better for your body. You shouldn't be exposed to formaldehyde in your underwear. Why is there formaldehyde in your underwear? Because it's an anti-wrinkling agent. That's why it's put there. It is a known carcinogen. It can cause cancer. I don't want to put that on the underwear I produce. Let's not do that. And so a lot of our customers are waking up to this saying, oh my gosh, like I had no idea. There are all of these, we've seen a lot in the news about PFAS and, the carcinogens and the chemicals associated with the off-gassing and leaching of clothing and, microplastic, you name it. I mean, there are so many things that, we've contributed to, I believe, educating the customer in opening their eyes, asking these questions around what is in my clothing. And it's honestly, it's like in the most intimate parts of your body. And you put this on every single day. You wash it, you wear it, you should really replace your underwear, getting to the second part of your question, every 6 to 12 months, candidly, which a lot of people do not do. People do not replace their underwear, right? And so we created the world's first intimates recycling program, which was kind of going back to our research originally around circularity and this idea of designing for circularity and recapturing value of post-consumer textiles. There's a huge amount. Consumption has gone up so much in the past decades. And there's just so much more in circulation that we need to really think about that's going to end up in a landfill. With intimates specifically, there is no second market for it. It's not going to the Goodwill. It's not going to, it shouldn't go on to a second person. You can't sell it. You definitely shouldn't sell it. And it's just a giant issue for textile waste that can off gas when it gets to landfills, toxic chemicals, because it's primarily made from polyester at this juncture. And so we created the recycling program so that people can thoughtfully and responsibly dispose of their old undergarments, whether they're subset or not, and feel empowered to be replacing their underwear and kind of combating this idea of, okay, I'm over consuming. We wanted to make it a feel-good situation that allows somebody to not feel guilty about purchasing new underwear, right? But also having a solution for getting rid of their old underwear, which I feel like that's the key, right? We have this slow fashion on one end of the spectrum, and then we have fast fashion on the other end of the spectrum, and we have to find something in the middle. And so that's our offering, and it has been incredible, the traction. We've recycled over 1.5 million garments to date, and it grows every month.
Okay, so when did you start the program, the recycling program?
From day one, we launched with it.
Okay, so in 2017.
Yeah, 2018 was when we launched.
2018.
Yeah.
So speaking of like all of the things that, and consumers don't know this, anybody who works in a business knows this, especially, a business that produces actual things, actual goods, all of the steps that are involved and all of the costs that are involved in producing things. How did you get to this point where you're able to scale and produce things in the way that you wanted to, with the materials that you wanted to, but at scale? How did it start? Were you losing money to start with? How did you find the manufacturers that you wanted, to the partners in production? Like, how did you find this, and how did it start? A lot of our entrepreneur partners and folks that we talk to are like, look, I would love to start, a sustainable apparel company with recycled materials. I've done the calculation. I'm going to be losing money from day one. Like, how do I do this? So how did you start that? Again, this is not like yesterday, 2017, 2018. How did you figure out how to make that work as a business?
It's challenging. I would say, I always say to any aspiring entrepreneur in general is to just start with what you know, because that's the lowest hanging fruit, right? If you are a marketing expert, put together a marketing strategy. If you are a content creator, start to think about what that looks like. If you are an operator, start building out your logistics. My background was mostly in product development, so I knew how to like make a garment. I designed it with a technical designer because my design background is more of the conceptual design. But it was, my own build, partnered with a technical designer locally. So we definitely were paying premium in New York City Garment District for that. I had a Rolodex of contacts that I had built myself just from previous work, and went out to factories that had a similar profile. And you really do have to kind of vet them. We had a formal vetting process. We have a code of conduct we go through, again, leaning on certifications, especially if you aren't versed in the language necessarily, or don't know this vendor. I would say certifications are a wonderful place to have kind of that third party verification that this vendor shares your values. They're going to be able to deliver on the claims that you are upholding and are really searching for as a business. I would say also at the time, organic cotton was not as expensive as it is. Well, it's actually normalizing again, but it went through like a peak of volatility, let's say, over the past 5 years. And so, at the outset, it was definitely a novel kind of introduction, if you will, in the cotton landscape. Organic cotton only makes up about 2% of the market. And so that I think was a differentiator for us, but also showed the factory that we were interested in investing in it. And we just partnered with them. I mean, we bootstrapped the company completely. And so and any product-based company, it's all working capital you have to put into the inventory and hold that. And so we bought on minimums. We bought a very limited and, focused assortment. I think, we took from the D2C playbook of do one thing really well. But we kind of bucked the D2C playbook of like build the parachute as you're jumping out of the plane, because with a product, if you go to market separately from tech, they go to market with like an MVP and they improve and they iterate and iterate. And we did that somewhat. Like, we wanted feedback, obviously, and we continue to iterate, and we still do today. But you have less chances to really make a real impact on your customer, right? And so we wanted it to be pretty great out of the gate. And so we just had a really focused assortment. We only had 4 SKUs. We were only in undies specifically. And as we started to get traction there, we got some really great press. Vogue covered our launch story, and all of a
That's a
sudden
big one.
yeah. Well, it also caused a little bit of an inventory issue for us because we sold
Yeah, I
out
bet
of
it's
about
yeah.
6 months of inventory in 6 weeks, which was complicated.
Wow. But
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean, what a great problem to have. I mean, I know that's a headache. Anything like that, you're like, oh, expletive, expletive. We did not budget for this, but what a great problem to have.
It's true. And, it was a problem. It was a good problem to have, but, we took solace in the fact that we had those people's emails, and then we could, you know, let them know when new product came in. And so that there was a silver lining there, certainly. COVID hit, which was incredible for us. We 3x'd overnight, and
Wow.
everyone wanted to stay at home, and no one wanted an underwire in their bra anymore. And
Yeah.
that was great. So I think there's a lot to say about timing in the market as well. Certainly, which is it's fortunate. I wouldn't say it's lucky, but it's definitely fortunate.
So then about timing, since you have been in this since, as you said, 2012, you've been in this, and of course in the industry for much longer than that. What was do you feel like finally, I've got a bunch of questions about the launch, but do you feel like between the time that you were, researching your master's thesis, working on this, becoming super interested, but not just interested, knowledgeable about what it would take, and I don't know, 5 years later, 4 years later, whatever, and when you launched, do you feel like that was like really great timing? Because as you said earlier, would have been a little bit too early, but do you feel like that was a great timing, or is it like, I wish I would have moved that up a little bit, or actually we were a little bit early? It doesn't sound like you were a little bit early.
I think we were right on time for the conversations we were having. We were female focused, which was completely novel at the time. I can't believe that, but apparently every women's underwear company prior to us was run by a man, um, which is crazy. And just the conversation around women's health, and prioritizing health, the conversation around sustainability, also, with respect to understanding, because there is I struggle with the term sustainability. We actually don't use it, but you have to, right? It's kind of it's the one word that really encompasses it all, but it's so complex. And what does sustainability mean to us? And what issues are we solving for? We're also focused on financial sustainability. I mean, there's so many things. And so that I think we were well poised for. I do sometimes wish, from like a market penetration standpoint or saturation and land grabbing, that we were a year earlier. But I think we were on time for what we were trying to do in the white space, certainly. Yeah. And I will say that our recycling program it was, the first of its kind, and I think really opened up the floodgates for a lot of apparel companies to start thinking about, taking responsibility for the products that they're putting into the world. And we built all that tech ourselves. We did all the operations ourselves. I mean, we were getting recycling boxes to my apartment for years. Insane. So much, which is basically waste management when you think about it. And yeah, it was that I think really helped us, because apparel, it's very difficult to build a moat in apparel. You can't have a patent, you are effectively part of this ephemeral machine that is predicated on trends and look and feel. And I think, we try to carve our niche out in that landscape by really owning that innerwear essentials perspective, and just having a beautifully made product that people really love putting on every day. So, yeah.
So I mean, we're entrepreneurs over at EPOP and B1. I've done this a couple times, but only in the technology side of things. So that really, I was like nodding along when you're like, yes, in technology, you launch with an MVP, and then you iterate on that really quickly, and you go through your alpha testing and your beta testing, and then you open up and waitlist, etc. You guys, and when I say guys, of course, I mean you ladies, you and your co-founder, you launched with a lot of things. You launched with like products. You launched with a recycling program. Like you launched with a lot of things right out the gate. That makes me, I'm, nothing to do with your venture, and that makes me sweat over here thinking about your huge launch. That's a lot of things to go at the gate with, and that's fantastic. Like, kudos to you. And it's something it's still going. Of course, everything, when you have a small business or any business, you iterate things on things constantly. But something that you went out the gate with 5 years ago from day one is still in existence. That's amazing. That's a lot of forethought, you two really, it's obvious that you've been in the business and this was something that you knew really well, to say this is something that exists now, that's going to be a staple in terms of differentiating ourselves. And can you just, for our audience that maybe are not entrepreneurs or early entrepreneurs, explain what a moat is?
Oh, sure. It's basically a protective, well, it's the physical moat of a castle, if you want to think about it that way. And you are the castle. Your business or your product is the castle. And if you're trying to carve out a white space in the market, the best thing to do that with is a moat, because then people can't replicate it and your IP is protected. And so, and the reason why it's pretty impossible to do that in apparel is because there are no protections in apparel unless you have a patented garment, like Spanx, for example, in our kind of similar vertical as a performance panty. That's a proprietary textile and build. And so, yeah, that's a protected, a moated garment. But it's pretty impossible to do, candidly, in apparel. And so what we focus on building, and going back to what you were saying about launching with a lot of things out of the gate, we launched with a very focused and fully fledged customer experience, which I think a lot of people overlook, particularly in direct to consumer. They're really focused on acquisition and getting it in front of people and spending money saturating the market. And then they kind of lose sight of the retention part. And we focused a lot on, okay, this is intimate apparel. We are creating an intimate experience. We want to have an intimate relationship with our customer. We want to know everything that she thinks about this product. We want to create a safe space in the internet, which can be the most terrible and terrifying.
Yeah, it's harder and harder to do.
Exactly. And that was huge for us. I mean, we would get handwritten notes from our customers. We had a phone line. It was very novel. Speaking directly to the people who buy our products, and really listening to that. I always say the first product that we launched post-launch was designed by our customers because they were the ones that gave us the feedback.
So that customer, that UX is kind of your moat. That is your differentiator. That's what makes you unique and different.
Yes. And the recycling program as well.
Well, and yeah, and I mean, a lot of, I would say, that's awesome. Okay. So back to the, before your launch, you're thinking this needs to happen. This needs to be a thing. Mm-hmm. How did you, and I would love to hear your experience, but in general, any kind of wisdom, how do you pick a co-founder?
Oh my goodness. Originally, I thought that I would have to do this myself. It didn't really even occur to me that I could have one. So that was eye-opening. But I knew that I needed to hire or work with, quote unquote, people that were as smart as me or way smarter. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the trite, but over talked about advice. And yeah, my co-founder is brilliant. And we had already had really great track records working together on, we launched a scholastic journal, in which she was an editor and I was the art director. And so we had a really great partnership, and we also had very similar work ethic values. I think that is actually the secret to the sauce, is the work ethic values of, when you are running a startup, and we were joking about this before we started really getting into it, but entrepreneurship is a lot like parenthood. I started this company before I became a parent, but it is very much like having a baby, and you kind of need to treat it that way, right? It keeps you up all night. It cries all day. It grows out of its clothes immediately. And so you need to have a good co-parent. And that is what a good co-founder relationship is, okay, I'm putting out this fire. Can you handle this fire? Or, let's get into the groove of, we're going to work 16-hour days for a month and a half straight to launch this part of the product, what have you. You need to make sure that, like, when you're down in the trenches, you have each other's backs.
I totally agree. I have two co-founders now. And within all of the startup communities that I'm in a part of, it's fun. I hear a lot of like, oh my gosh, I'm in therapy to deal with my co-founder because we're just not on the same page. And on the other hand, I hear, thank God have somebody to lean on in this, because as you said, this is so hard. Like entrepreneurship is so rewarding and so fulfilling, and it's so hard. So, you know, I hear both so often, and I think you're exactly right. I would echo that. Values around work, what this means to the person, because if this means something in my life totally different to what it means to yours, let's align there, at least have a conversation about it. And then what goals and milestones look like. And that doesn't necessarily mean like exit or acquisition or IPO, anything like, but what do we want this to be? And what are our milestones and our goals? Because again, if they're wildly misaligned or you don't have the conversation at all, that's like when you're in therapy to deal with your co-founder, because it is like having a spouse. It's that intense. It's very, so, okay, that's interesting. I would say even more than when you survey things like, okay, this is what I do well, this is what my experience is, and this is what you do well, and let's make sure we don't have any overlapping. Like even before, you know, the repartitioning of tasks, I think aligning on values, work ethic, goals, things like that, is way more important, because as you said, you'll be hiring people too.
Right.
So I think that's trumps everything.
100%. I think it's less talked about than I feel like it should be, personally. But yeah, I think the goals thing is huge as well. Like, what does success look like? Because you need to make sure that you're working towards the same things. For us, we've never really been focused on building a business to exit. And I think, especially when you're bootstrapped, but definitely if you're funded, I think that that's an important thing to align on, because what success looks like to us is creating a sustainable business that is sustainable from a supply chain standpoint, but also financially sustainable, right? So, you know, we're really focused on making the unit economics work, making the margins work, making the operations work, and building what we call the well-oiled machine. And that to us is what success is. It's not about the check size at exit, quote unquote.
Yeah. I had worked with both of my co-founders before. We'd all worked together. And still, when we started this venture and I was, you know, coming on board, I sent them a one pager about what it is to work with me. And this is my MBTI score, my Myers-Briggs, and this is my Enneagram and all of this stuff. These are my goals and this is what I want it to be, et cetera. So just to bust open that conversation, like right from day one, I think is super important. So then let's talk about today and in the future. So are you completely e-commerce, direct to consumer, or do you have any retail partners?
We don't, well, I shouldn't say that. We are primarily D2C, and that is what our team focuses on. We have a handful of wholesalers we've worked with, Nordstrom in the past. But our primary focus has been D2C, just with the, I would say, volatility of the market, you know, working through COVID, having control over our own warehousing and our customer experience, our own data. Those things have always been really primary to us. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't necessarily venture out. I think omnichannel is potentially the way of the future, as everyone keeps saying. So we have sight lines there, but primarily we are direct to consumer currently.
Okay. Currently. And you talked about larger corporations and kind of the thing that was one of the things that was pushing you out of how you were working in the fashion industry before. Over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, have you seen any material evolution in terms of how larger corporations are, I don't want to say committed to, are making their practices or manufacturing more sustainable or environmentally conscious, at least in any way? We see, you know, like H&M having recycling program. We see Zara doing things that have been, you know, there's a lot of greenwashing, obviously, and there's a lot of programs that have started like that have been immediately debunked or been like, this is crap. Have you seen, because you've been in this industry, for a long time. Have you seen any material change in how large corporations, not necessarily only fast fashion, but in general, are tackling this issue or evolving at all?
Definitely. Absolutely. And I think, the H&Ms and the Zaras of the world that are really dabbling in more sustainable fiber choices or more sustainable material innovation in general. It's all, and perhaps a lot of that is greenwashing or can be. We have our take on recycled poly as a business, which we think is very fraught, given that it disrupts an already circular supply chain with recycled bottles, and it actually takes recycled bottles out of this circular supply chain. So that's an example of greenwashing, if you will, that we have a perspective on at Subset. But I do think that because so many larger businesses are getting into the conversation, it's signaling a change, right? It's signaling that the fringe, smaller operators that kind of lead the weather vane in terms of material innovation and trends, and the reports that WGSN put out every year, or McKinsey, who have you. It's signaling that there is demand for it. There's an interest for it. And the bigger thing that we've been really keeping our eyes on is that the B2B side of things is actually starting to catch up. The thing about material innovation is that it can be very expensive to scale. You think about spider silk or leather made from pineapples, or these post-consumer exciting turning trash into treasure moments within material innovation is something that we are very focused on. We keep our ears to the ground on that. Our kind of approach to that is really designing for circularity, where we've closed the gap on cleaning up textile waste. We're trying to close the gap on our own product cycle. So not only designing a garment that is easily recaptured for textile recycling, but then our returns inventory is actually being recycled into fiber to fiber outcomes, which is a first, and it's the first in our sector. And eventually we'll be creating products from that outcome ourselves. So basically, in most states, but definitely in New York, you can't resell an unpackaged intimate apparel garment. So anything that we get back that's returned to us, we've just been holding onto in our warehouse until we have a solution for good use for that textile. And I think that is probably far off for a lot of larger corporations, but you'll see like Madewell doing denim drives and trying to get people to give back their denim and incentivize them. I think we've been incentivizing our customers to recycle their old undies for years, and that has really worked in educating people about better consumptive and disposal practices. But yeah, I think we're still a far ways off, but a lot of that has to do with like the larger corporations investing in these innovations that are at the cutting edge of the technology and materials, and it will take them, and that we really believe rising tides raise all boats. So it's exciting that eventually those things will become more scalable, more mainstream, and then all of us will get to participate and bring better products to market for every eco-minded consumer.
All right, that's okay. That's pretty much the answer that I was hoping to hear from your perspective. Yes, progress, much more progress needed. Yes, we'll get there if everyone participates, etc. Yeah. Okay.
It's a multi-pronged approach. Yeah.
Multi, so many prongs. Yeah. And the consumer voice is obviously super, super loud. Yeah. Okay, we've come to the rapid fire portion of our conversation.
I'm so bad at these. Okay. I'm so bad at rapid fire.
I mean, and these questions are designed for the entrepreneurs who are listening. Some of them, it's like to make them feel better, and you'll see why. And some of it's like, oh, interesting. So number one, did you get to everything that you wanted to in 2023? We're in Q4 of 2023 now. So in January, when you're making your plans, did you get to everything that you wanted to get to in 2023?
Yes.
Wow. Amazing. Okay. What was your biggest challenge this year?
Bringing entirely new categories to market.
Ooh, for example?
Men's.
Oh, okay, nice. What was the most exciting thing to have happened this year?
We rebranded because of the men's collection.
Oh,
Which was
nice.
also the most challenging, to be honest, but it was
Yes,
very
yes.
exciting. I would say exciting over challenging for sure.
Rebranded, just for everyone to hear, rebranded from and to.
We were originally known as Nikki, and now we are Subset.
Right, cool. Okay, 3 questions. Your biggest, so this is in the life of the business, your biggest success to date?
Our recycling program traction.
Awesome. Your biggest failure to date?
Launching a warehouse in the UK.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we ended up doing just international shipping from our existing warehouse with a better platform, but we made the mistake of splitting inventory overseas, which I do not recommend anyone do.
Yeah, good to know. And that was going to be my offline question for you is, do you ship internationally? Because I'm headed to the States in a couple weeks and I was going to just send everything to my mom's house, but you do ship internationally. Awesome. Okay.
We do.
Okay. Most important lesson you've learned to date?
Oh man. See, this is why I'm bad at
It's a big question.
it's a really big question. The most important hire slow, fire fast.
Ooh, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay. If you could get 85%, it's a very specific number, but 85% of the world to adopt a single behavior, what would that be?
Oh my God. Be nice to your neighbors.
Oh, that's a good one too.
I worked in retail forever and we had a sign that was said like, it was basically the gist was be kind,
Yeah,
be kind to people.
just
And I
be
think
nice.
in business, I think that is a really undervalued quality. People forget that, working with people leaves a stamp. You have to be nice. You got to be kind.
And give us a plug. Where can we find you on online, on socials? Where can we find you?
Across the internet, you can find us at wearsubset.com. That's WEARSUBSET.com.
Awesome. Cayla, thank you so much. I really like this conversation. A lot of nuggets in there for the entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs out there. Thank you very, very much. We hope to see you on B1 soon. And everybody else will see you on B1 shortly.
Thank you so much, Amber. Lovely chatting with you. Appreciate you having me.